Imagine it. You were born 30,000 years ago. There is no hospital, no doctor, and no ambulance. If you get injured, a simple scratch could turn into your death. If you catch a cold, there is no one to bring you medicine. If your tooth gets infected, there is no dentist. And if you go a few days without finding food, your body has to decide for itself how to stay alive. Now, a question: how long did early humans actually live? 20 years? 30 years? 40 years? Or maybe some of them even reach 60 or 70? The answer to this question is much stranger than you think. By the way, if you're interested in history, human evolution, and the secrets of early human life, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. When we say early humans only lived to 30, there's a big problem. We're mixing up two completely different things: life expectancy at birth and the maximum age a human could reach. These two are not the same at all. Imagine that out of every 100 babies born in a population, a large number die before reaching the age of 5. In that case, the average lifespan of the entire population drops sharply. For example, life expectancy at birth might be around 30 years, but that doesn't mean everyone died at 30. On the contrary, if a human made it through childhood and reached adulthood, their chances of living into later decades became much higher. Studies on early human populations show that childhood mortality was extremely high, but adults who survived those dangerous early years could live into their 50s, 60s, and even beyond, so the real picture is not. Early humans grew old and died at 30. The reality is that childhood was extremely dangerous. Now let's go back 30,000 years. A baby is born. Its first enemy is not a predator, not a cave lion, not even an enemy tribe. Its first enemy is nature itself. The baby's body is not fully ready. Its immune system is weaker. It cannot find food on its own. It cannot escape the cold. It cannot run from animals. And for a long time, it is completely dependent on its mother and the group. Now imagine this baby being born in an environment where no hospital exists. If the mother can't find enough food, if disease spreads, if the winter is too harsh, if the water is contaminated, or if an accident happens, this child's life might end very quickly. It was exactly this high infant and child mortality that pulled the average life expectancy down in ancient societies. Estimates for early humans usually put life expectancy at birth around 30 years, but that number was heavily influenced by child mortality. So what if you survive childhood? Here the story completely changes. Imagine you're a 5-year-old child. You've made it through the first few years of life. Your body is stronger. You know how to walk. You can eat. You're gradually learning how to make fire, how to recognize edible plants, how to escape animals, how to make tools, and most importantly, you're no longer completely dependent on your mother. Now your chances of survival have increased a lot. When you reach adolescence, you enter a stage where you can truly contribute to the group's survival. Hunt, gather food, care for children, make tools, and learn the group's knowledge. That's why the idea that all early humans died at 30 is completely wrong. Now suppose you're 20 years old, you're young and strong, but you're still facing a world that can kill you almost every day. Imagine you separate from the group to hunt. One mistake, one fall, one blow from an animal, and it's over. Or maybe you cut your hand on a piece of stone. Today we would probably wash the wound, disinfect it, bandage it, and take antibiotics if needed. But back then, that same small wound could turn into an infection. Of course, this doesn't mean every wound was fatal. Humans had healing skills and empirical knowledge. They used plants. They cared for wounds, and most importantly, they passed survival knowledge from generation to generation. There's another common misconception here. When we talk about early humans, some people imagine that every day a person would leave the cave and fight a lion or a mammoth. But real life wasn't like that. Most of a human's time was spent finding food, preparing food, caring for children, making tools, finding water, moving around and living socially. Danger existed, but it wasn't an action movie scene every day. What actually made humans vulnerable was a combination of several small dangers: cold, hunger, infection, childbirth, disease, and sometimes animal attacks or conflict with other humans. When modern medicine doesn't exist, these risks can drive mortality rates high. So, what about the 60-year-old men and women? This is where the story gets interesting, because ethnographic evidence from modern hunter gatherer societies shows that people who reached older ages didn't necessarily die at 30 or 40. In some studies, the modal age of death among adult hunter gatherers can reach into the 70s. Of course, these groups are not Paleolithic humans themselves, and the data should not be applied exactly to 30 or 40,000 years ago. These data mainly help us understand that a low average life expectancy does not necessarily mean humans were incapable of reaching old age. In other words, it was possible for a human to reach 60, even beyond. Reaching very advanced ages was probably much rarer than today, but it was not impossible. Now imagine you're 55. Your hair has turned white. Your teeth are no longer what they used to be. Your eyesight has weakened. Your body's no longer as strong as it was at 20. But you have one thing no young person has: experience. You may have seen dozens of hard winters. You know which plants are edible. You know where to find water. You know when the camp needs to be moved. You know which animal tracks are dangerous. You know when the weather is about to change. And perhaps most importantly, you carry the stories of previous generations in your mind. In such a society, an older person is not just an old person. They can be like a living book, knowledge for which no writing exists to record it. And this is probably one of the reasons why human longevity and the role of older individuals became so important in human societies. So, why do humans age at all? Now, we have an even more interesting question. Why does the human body age in the first place? Why can't it stay healthy for 150 years? Our body is constantly repairing itself. Cells get damaged. The body repairs them. Tissues are rebuilt. The immune system fights threats. But this system is not perfect. Over time, damage accumulates. Repair capacity declines. Muscles weaken. Vision and hearing change. And the likelihood of disease increases. This part of human biology is a very complex story, and one cannot simply say, because early humans lived dangerous lives, their bodies aged at 30. In reality, research on early humans has shown that the pattern of human aging is more complex than this simple idea. But why do we live so much longer today? Now compare yourself with a modern human. If you cut your hand today, we have doctors. If it gets infected, we have antibiotics. If your tooth goes bad, we have dentists. If the water is contaminated, we have water treatment systems. If a baby gets sick, we have medical care. If a disease spreads, we have medicine, vaccines, and hospitals. And these things have dramatically reduced the risk of death at many ages. Demographic studies show that the main difference between the mortality patterns of early humans and modern societies is especially striking in childhood and adulthood. So the issue is not simply that modern humans have a different body. A large part of the difference comes from environment, nutrition, hygiene, medicine, safety, and living conditions. So what's the real answer? How many years? Well, after all of this, what is the answer to the original question? How long did early humans live? The answer is not a single number, because early humans were not one single group. We're talking about millions of years of human history, different species, different environments, different climates, different foods, and different living conditions. But if we talk about hunter-gatherer societies as an approximate model for pre-industrial life, life expectancy at birth could be around 30 years, mainly because of high child mortality. But if someone made it through childhood, the story was different. Some people could reach their 40s, 50s, 60s, and even beyond. So if you saw a human from 30,000 years ago at the age of 30, you wouldn't necessarily be looking at an old man. You would probably be facing an adult who could still hunt, travel, care for the family, and play an important role in the group.